most redneck green shirt comment. I'm like, hey, I listened to Alan Carpenter in the 4 hours I spent on my brush hog while it was 90 degrees. It was so hot that my batteries quit working.
Yeah.
But the tractor kept running. You actually have to get off like every 45 minutes and hose the radiator out from the little dust, the little pollen heads and such, because the tractor will overheat. The driver's fine, but the tractor will overheat. Back in my younger years, I used to put a 6-pack on and mow until the 6-pack was gone.
Yeah.
I don't do that anymore.
No, that's a young man's game.
Yeah. So I've reached the age, the pinnacle, when you no longer drink a 6-pack while mowing the fields.
Yes.
So,
yeah, but that is, that's the kind of thing. Obviously the show for a lot of the people listening, they're gardeners or they're people who do their lawns. But if you are a person whose life requires you to get on a tractor, and I have been on a tractor several times in my youth, man, that's work. That's actual work. When I complain about this job, I got to remember that.
The heat is big time. When you're mowing and it's 90 and that tractor generates about, 20 degrees. So when you're sitting on it, it literally just...
You're not riding an Lexus SUV here.
It bakes you, literally.
Yeah.
But I feel when I get off, I'm medium well.
You are. You, as far as I like my steaks, you might be a little overdone, but, that's okay.
I'm overdone.
Yeah. So what's happening at Stan's right now?
We just opened.
Oh, yeah.
It's 9 o'clock.
That's right. You did just open.
We are now, our hours are Monday through Saturday, 9 to 6, Sunday, 11 to 4. So the big thing going on right now is today is July 1st. Believe it or not, things are slowing down a little bit for me personally, so I even know the date. I mean, this is big for me.
Usually you don't.
The beginning of July starts Loyalty Loot Redemption.
That's right.
I'm going to give you a little heads up as to, it seems like, because there's a lot of newer clients, which we're so fortunate to have. Like COVID had many downsides, and the shift in the industry for us was there was a lot of stay home time that people didn't plan on, didn't bank on. No one saw this tragedy coming, so we saw a lot of people that did stay at home and change their outdoor living spaces and did a garden that didn't used to do a garden. Couples that just got their own place, things like that. They're like, oh, I was home for 6 months and we did a lot of greenscaping. We tore out the front because we hated it, because we had time to do that. Things slowed down a little bit, which was a benefit for our industry, and unfortunately a lot of commerce. There was a negative side to that, which I totally respect, the struggles of what happened in other industries. But what happened is there's a lot of new clients. And so talking about July 1st being the loyalty loot, just kind of little, whatever they call it, housekeeping as far as the interaction of Stan's and the gardener. Loyalty loot, a lot of times I think when you go to some businesses, you're like, no, I don't want it on your website or on your email. I don't want it on your email because I'm going to get, and we're truly not like that. Being that we're, our marketing department is literally Gray Matter Media and the 3 or 4 of us that say, hey, what do you think about this? We don't have 200 IT people behind us that are pounding your emails with, and sending spam. And
you're not sending out client lists and all that nonsense.
Right, yeah, it doesn't happen like that. So the loyalty loot is really, truly not as cumbersome as some of the big box stores and stuff where we're pounding you to death. The loyalty loot works simply like this. Any time of year that you do business, any time that you come in, especially spring when you're tallying up your totals, getting your garden in and your bedding plants and such, every time you come in and you spend $10, you get $1 back. That $1 goes on the system. So Alan has your own, you use your phone number or your email, whatever, your last name, and you say, hey, Carpenter. Oh, you're Alan, yeah, which everyone knows. They wouldn't ask you. Trust me, Alan, they wouldn't ask you. So when you buy $10 worth of product, you get one back, and that accrues. It accrues over an infinite amount of time. It never expires, doesn't go bad. So when you decide that you want to redeem that loyalty loot, it's redeemable in the month of July and the month of November.
Yes.
Up to 50% your total purchase. So if you've been looking and eyeing up like a fountain for, the back patio or something like that, and you're like, yeah, I just don't want to, I really don't want to spend $300, $400, $299, whatever it is that you've been eyeing up as a centerpiece. July and November is the time to take a look at that, because if you've accrued, and this is the day when our staff is really tested with how much do I have? The phone calls.
Everybody wants to know.
Because they're like, okay, well, I'm going to kind of eye something up. If I'm going to buy a $300 fountain, do I have $150? Because at your purchase, you can spend up to 50% of it in loyalty loot. So if you have a $300 fountain, you purchase a $300 fountain and you have accrued $150 in loyalty loot over this year or the past 10 years, you can
because it doesn't expire.
Yep, does not expire, just keeps rolling over. You can use 150 of that against that. So it's a half off. You just use your points, period.
Yeah.
No strings attached. So there's a whole host of reasons to be in our system, in our database, because if something happens, you got the wrong product, you got whatever, they can simply look you up. Like, oh, I lost my receipt. Just like a lot of places, we truly can. We are automated enough to just look you up, look up when you got it, what it was. It happens too when you think, oh, I put in these 4 fruit trees and I lost the tags on 2. I know what these 2 are.
Yeah.
So it will on occasion come in, and William in our nursery is really good at, like,
I don't know what I bought.
Yeah,
that happens.
Yeah, let me look it up for you. So William will take you in the air conditioned nursery office and, okay, what's your name? And you're like, oh, did you get it last August? Yeah, here it is. It's these 4. Oh, yeah. Thanks, because it's in the system. So there's a whole host of reasons to be in. Nothing, truly, honestly, nothing negative. If you do put your phone number in there and you opt in, you'll get texts. I just got one. My phone, just as we hit the air, so it was probably queued up to be at 9 o'clock.
Right.
It said, hey, today's July 1st. It starts loyalty loot redemption. Come in and spend your dollars. So, we're not shying away from you spending your dollars. We want you to come in and spend them and see us, So that's the reason for the loyalty loot. So that starts today. It goes through the entire month of July.
Fantastic.
We had the 80s pricing that ended yesterday, and it was kind of neat. It was fun because staff was there till like after 6:30. We closed at 6 because everybody was coming in like, I just made it. It's done today. I want this and this and this. Staff's kind of like, okay, that's because it ends today. So it was because loyalty starts today.
Yeah.
But trying to make the sales side, and if you want to call it like inflation buster kind of stuff, so you can still do a lot of work in your garden and not break the bank.
Well, when you think about it, and you're talking about being in the program and you don't get any spam, and actually what you get can sometimes be very useful educational stuff as well as news about sales and so forth. But if you think about, you buy from a big box store, and then you're trying to grow something, you're like, it's not growing good, but I don't remember exactly what it is, what species it is. You're lost, basically. You got to take a picture on your phone, put it up on Facebook. Does anybody know what this tree is? And you know what you're going to get? 15 answers that are all different and none of them right. So obviously, if you buy at stands and you say, I bought this last August, what is it? You're in our system. We can tell you what it is, and here's how you need to take care of it. That's huge.
I have 2 wedding rings on.
You do.
I know you're watching me. Like, what are you doing? My toddler.
But you only have one wife, so that's the important
part. How do
part.
you know? No, I'm just looking down, and I know you're looking at me, I'm giving an insight into what goes on in the studio when Alan and I do a show. He's like furrowing his brow, looking at me. What are you doing?
Yes,
like I have 2 wives today.
My Indonesian gold never comes off.
Yeah, my job does not allow that nice fancy gold. I have to use the silicone ones, which my wife condones because she's like, I don't want you to come home with no ring finger one of these days because I use tractors and equipment.
If you use equipment or work in the sawmill, you do not want one of these rings like I wear.
My 28-month-old knows that there's supposed to be a wedding ring on. She knows that it's silicone, and
Where is
she put the second one on because I have a backup. So I'm just wondering like where my second wife is. I hope she makes a lot of money. So I've said numerous times like we do talk about gardening, but I think it's important to keep any sort of demographic coming to this show that we have a little bit of fun. So I just wanted to explain to Alan what was going on. My toddler put a second wedding ring on.
Maybe you were trying to attract the polygamous demographic.
No, I'll get back to the plants before this show goes.
And they buy a lot of plants.
I don't want this show to go to total manure, so we'll go back to the plants. Where were we? Oh, one thing we're working on with that, we're kind of. I've made some phone calls. We're trying to make sure that it's effective yet not invasive, like a species. Is that when you buy something of significance, like say you come in for Mother's Day and you get 6 hanging baskets, I'm trying to set the parameters up so our system.
That's what my mom did.
Yeah, that our system will send you an email if you're in our system, if you bought that under your loyalty program. That will send you a little, kind of mini email on like, hey, this is the stuff that Alan and Josh would talk about on their show. This is proper watering and feeding. So even if a percentage open and say, whoa, I didn't know that little packet on the top was just a starter packet. If you bought a $300 Japanese maple tree, that care for that tree, maybe we send that email out for the winter to say, hey, we know you bought a tree this year. That tree is vulnerable. We want to make sure you come in and get your burlap, and spend $3 to make sure that plant is protected in the winter. We're working on that program right now so that info that's out there, that goes out there, is really useful for you. So that's one thing that we are working on with our 200 IT people that are backing us. That some of that valuable information, so that we are still at the forefront of making sure you get information. Because truly, whether you've had a bad experience with I bought 3 hanging baskets and I killed them, or I'm sorry, they died. You didn't necessarily kill them.
You didn't.
Because I've said more than once, if you had 5 of something not do well, then it's kind of on us, because at some point we failed to get you what you needed to know to survive. So that's why here's a couple more. Try this. This is what went wrong. It does not do good service, good business, and it's bad for the green industry. If you do something 3 years and you fail at it all 3 years, I need to get to you. I want to get my claws in you and say, okay, explain to me, because I will fix it. I will find out what's going on, and through the conversation we'll find out that you accidentally were putting it in the shade, or you water 3 times a day. Whoa, what did you say?
Right. Well, we've discussed watering at length. I mean, that's the number one mistake.
Oh, it's always the
number
go-to.
one.
I had an experience with a customer just yesterday where he stopped me and he's, I did something different this year. I have grown a garden for years. My wife and I are both getting older. We just wanted to do a patio garden. We put 4 tomatoes in 5-gallon buckets, and so I went through the usual. Did you drill holes in the 5-gallon buckets? What soil did you put in the buckets? And I had to explain what I've talked about on the air, that growing in a container with bottom and sides is just a different soil composition. And that's why the advent of potting soil, that it's different. It's just a different dynamic when you put something in a cylinder like that than growing in the earth and ground. Mother Nature has a different way of capillary action, of moving water, of keeping cool underneath and warm on top. There's a different dynamic when you put something in a pot on the patio.
Right.
And so I got to go through the whole gamut. I had the time to afford to him, that now that things are slowing a little bit, to say, hey, this is what I think is going on. This is what I think happened. And it was a giant, this was the first time they did this as a couple. This is the first time they did their patio garden. They thought, okay, I'm going to do this. I got some extra buckets in the garage. And then as we talked it through, I'm not going to call him out on what hiccup we had. And he's like, that makes total sense. I said, I really, truly want you to know, going forward, the next 10 years, however long you decide to garden in Erie before you retire to Florida, I want you to have your 5 patio tomatoes that are awesome, that are 6 foot tall and 300 cherry tomatoes on it, and I want you to get what you wanted out of that. So if I can stop the traffic here and say, this is what you want to do, this was the hiccup, and you go forward for the next 10 years with 5 happy buckets, and getting what you want, I might have totally changed your experience on your patio.
Sure.
And so I really, truly, as a family business, as the grower, the commercial grower, that puts the material out that we produce, it does no good to me. It does no good to us as a staff, as a business, the green industry as a large whole, if we can't get that information out to you to succeed. The whole reason I'm sitting here today, it's not, to us, it's not like a box store lost leader money grab. That's not what the green industry is for us. It is our livelihood, and it's a passion. I know there's a whole host of staff, and they're going to shake their head when I say this, but there is staff that would come in if they had to work for free because they love the industry.
Well, here's the other thing, though, Josh. Because you are a family-owned business, because you've been doing it for decades, you want people to succeed, because when you start to grow stuff and it does well, what do you want to do? You want to buy more stuff and grow more stuff.
Yeah, let's face it, it's a great portion of that is dispendable income. Or
Sure it is.
It's no different than going fishing on the boat. I love to do that. I love to play in the garden. You can go to your roadside stand and get a head of cabbage.
Sure
you
can.
don't have to grow it.
Or a farmer's market.
What good is, if you're gonna fly model airplanes, if you crash every single time you fly, that ain't no fun.
That's
you want to
true.
at least land at some point, so it really is a passion of ours to make sure that when you take whatever it is, like I've never grown hot peppers. What's the trick? Last year I failed miserably. I watered them 3 times a day. I don't understand why they hated me. Like, let me explain what they like.
Yeah.
And then the next 20 years, especially, that's really important to us for the young people that COVID kind of brought in. Hey, I've never done this. My boyfriend and I are really interested in this. We now have our own place.
Yeah.
I don't want you to be turned off by your first summer. Be like, yeah, everything we plant, we kill. I don't want you to go forward for there on thinking I have a black thumb, because that's really not the case. It's just no one got to you with that stuff.
Sure.
Like no one's going to come in here just out of the blue and steal your job and run your board for you, because that's your niche. I want to share the niche.
Well, absolutely, and I mean,
and it's not rocket science. I can do it.
Well, and the thing is, there are such fun things to start off to grow. We always talk about herbs, and even though it spreads like crazy, I know people who just out of the blue said, "I'm going to try growing garlic." Well, you know what? That's easy.
Yeah,
and it's you could cook with it every night.
There's sometimes when a customer asks me a question like, yeah, I'm thinking, I don't know, I'm debating like maybe growing some mint, or maybe I'm going to put in some garlic, or how do you grow daffodils? And it's a little bit of chuckle going, look, if you're just getting into this hobby, this is definitely the thing to start with, because you're not going to fail.
You will not fail.
It is, there is such little necessary information needed. Like, make sure you put this part up.
Yeah, that's
there
it.
You go. Job
well,
done.
Well, and especially with garlic, I like, because my dad used to grow fantastic garlic, and it's one of those things that literally you can use every day in cooking. Every day.
Oh, that's my wife.
And you can grow it and say, I grew that. It's fresh. I didn't have to go buy it anywhere. So it's a great way to get hooked.
We get shipments of bulbs in the fall in plastic crates from Netherlands. They are very useful crates. We don't throw them out. Everyone actually asks, can we get some crates?
Got any more of those crates?
Yeah, and we use them in a whole host of ways. So when we get shipments of like fall garlic in, we'll take compost and put in these, because these crates, they're about 14, 15 inches high and maybe 2 feet by 1 foot. We fill them with compost and break up the garlic into the cloves and just plug them in.
That's it.
So they get tucked in a cold part of a greenhouse, so they don't freeze solid, because they're obviously in a crate, and the garlic grows so you can pick up the crate, take it home with you.
I mean,
set it on the back deck and just pluck the garlic off. When my wife and I first started dating, and she started, cooking, and we started cooking in the kitchen together and stuff, I kind of teased her. I'm like, is there anything you know how to cook that isn't laden with garlic? And she's like, no.
My kind of
She's
woman
like,
right there.
If it doesn't have Parmesan cheese or garlic in it, I don't find really a reason to consume it. That's how she
100%
started.
Right. She's 100% right.
So yeah, garlic is just an easy, and and that might be the catalyst. That's the only vocabulary word
That's
I
a
have
good
for
one,
you
though.
today.
Good word.
That might be the catalyst that starts you into like, I grew garlic, and wow, I can't believe how easy it is. And now I all of a sudden know that there's like 20 different kinds of garlic, and now I'm going to grow this purple kind of garlic, and it has a totally different flavor. Or maybe I'm going to try soft neck, or there are a host of different kind of garlics. There might be someone out there going, there is? I thought garlic was garlic.
A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, not at all. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of garlic. In the fall, usually when we get our bulbs, just learning point here, lots of people, and I'm talking about a lot of people, dozens of people come in when they see the tulips, the daffodils, the hyacinths, the crocus, things like that blooming in their neighbor's yard. And they're like, hey, I want to get some daffodils. I see my neighbor has them. You plant them in the fall. They stratify. I lied. More vocabulary. They stratify.
You did.
They sit there in the cold. They know it's cold. They start to very, very slowly root, and then they bloom in the spring. You could do this with the garlic. We'll have a really good selection of fall garlic. You know, that the purple, the hard neck, the soft neck. That we'll have them in little packets. Say you get like 3 full bulbs, okay, because you separate them.
Right.
Like if you want prolific garlic, you break them like you're going to crush them for culinary, and you plant them basal plate down, tip, point up. Very simple. You can grow them in the crates if you don't let them freeze hard. All kinds of easy ways to grow garlic. This might be the catalyst. You come in to get a pack of daffodils and a pack of really generally inexpensive garlic. Difference between some of the garlic you buy at the garden center and the garlic that you buy in the grocery store is that, believe it or not, they kind of wax and treat with a growth inhibitor so that it sits on the shelf for a while and it doesn't grow in the midst of them trying to sell it. Because if it uses up some of that energy, it starts to become softer. It's not growing. It's not putting energy back into the bulb. So they prevent it. They kind of give it a little treatment of whatever they use in the grocery store industry to keep it from growing. So the primary difference, not only at the garden centers can you find all the different varieties, all the different names. You're just going to find garlic generally, at the grocery store. You'll get a bunch of different name varieties, so you know what you're growing. But they're not treated with growth inhibitor. What good would that be for a garden center that wants to grow garlic?
And that's also why if you are growing your own garlic, you need to get a garlic keeper so it lasts longer because it's not waxed.
You hand braid yours and hang it in the pantry. I know you.
No, I fired mine in the kiln. I made my own.
Wow. Smoked it. Smoked garlic.
Smoked garlic. Oh, now you're talking.
That's back when we used to consume more bourbon. That's what we used to do when we were on the show when we first started, is we would taste bourbon and do the show.
That's why it sounded the way it did.
That's why your friends listen just to hear me heckle you.
That is also true.
They could care less about gardening.
Yeah, that's actually true. But I don't need to go into that. But talking about great ways to get started. What if right now somebody goes, I've been listening to these two guys for years, and you know what?
I'm changing the channel.
Before they say that, I want to get started. Is there anything you can start on July 1st?
Ooh, loaded question. Normally I can take your teasers.
Yeah. I can't think of anything in my limited knowledge.
July 1st is when you start thinking about your freezer crop. And I say freezer crop on the vegetable side because we just did put fresh batch, believe it or not. We just threw out the stuff that was old. And you say, what? Why would you throw out vegetables? Because when you have aged vegetables like the cole crops, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale, cabbage, lettuce, when something sits in a cell pack and the way that we provide it from a growing standpoint to the consumer, when it sits in a cell pack and it starts to see heat and it inevitably it sees dry, wet, hungry, and you plant it, a lot of times it will bolt. It'll go directly to seed. And my lead into this is that you got to really watch some of that material that is capable of bolting and going to seed. And the difference is, instead of producing like a head of broccoli, it goes right to, or the head of broccoli starts and then that broccoli goes right to flower. That's no good. You don't want that. That's not good for culinary use. And the reason that it does that is generally it sees stress. So when it's been in a cell pack too long and it has a lot of roots, a lot of times I'll see kind of people picking through going, do you have any bigger broccoli? That's truly not what you want. Everybody would think like, I want to jump on things. I want a bigger plant.
Sure.
That's not truly what you want, because you don't want that particular material, bok choy and mustard and stuff. They can bolt if you give them a side eye. I mean, they really don't like any stress. If they get stressed, they bolt right to seed. So when you see us pulling things off the shelf and pitching them, it's because we don't want them to bolt on you. We want them to produce a head. So if this time of year is when you're like, I didn't get my stuff in, or I didn't have time in the spring, I want you to start thinking about a freezer crop. A lot of people don't realize all the cycling you can do in the garden. Now that your tomatoes are big, maybe start putting some lettuce at the base of the tomatoes so they get shade, so they don't see summer midday heat. You can grow lettuce in part sun. So if that sun comes up and gets nice, good, direct, cool morning sun, low angle of incidence sun, and then you have it directionally with the tomato that doesn't get that really hot midday sun, you can multi-crop like that. So watch the weather